Welcome back to Mid-Maryland Votes. Tonight we sit down with Frederick County Board of Education candidate Shelley Potter, an educator, former administrator, and curriculum leader with more than 15 years of experience in education. With school board elections approaching, voters will decide whether Frederick County schools return their focus to academics, parental involvement, and student achievement, or continue down a path increasingly centered on political and social issues. We talk parents' rights, transparency, school performance, and the future of our classrooms. Now let's get into it. Welcome to Mid-Maryland Votes. I'm your host, Mark Flynn. With me tonight is my distinguished guest, Shelley Potter, who is running for the Frederick County Board of Education as a candidate. Shelley, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Can you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, your background, and what made you decide you wanted to get into this race?
Sure. So I'm an original Frederick County native. I have deep, deep roots here in Frederick County. We go back to the 1800s, and I went to elementary and middle school here, Lewistown Elementary and Middletown Elementary and Middle School. Moved out of the area, and as an adult, I became a teacher. And I taught in Montgomery County and Washington, D.C. I taught all levels from KG up to college level. I think the only grade I haven't taught was 12th grade. Is the only grade I've not actually taught. And in 2015, I moved abroad. I lived in the Middle East for 5 years.
Wow, where at?
I was first in the UAE, and then I was in Oman. So 5 years total abroad.
Very nice. I spent 11 years overseas in the military. I loved every minute of it, but it was nice to come home.
Yes, both. It was nice to see green. Like, it would just be so refreshing to come home and see the green again. But it's a great life over there. And I was really able to learn a lot, in education, working in different schools. I worked in international baccalaureate schools at first as a teacher. Then I became an administrator where I was the head of a primary school. And then eventually I was a curriculum coordinator for a 5-campus school. And I came back to the United States during the pandemic. I did 2 years in DC teaching, and then I moved up to Frederick to be closer to family and my grandmother. When I moved up to Frederick, I was initially planning on getting involved in the school system here and teaching, because that's my profession. That's what I'm educated to do. And I just heard so many stories. And also I saw the pay. I thought the pay was a little bit offensive for, a qualified teacher with years of experience, and then just started hearing the stories. So right now I'm trying to help out in another way.
You bring up a great point. Teachers, especially in the Frederick County Public Schools, are overwhelmed right now. They're feeling overwhelmed, right? Their pay is not the greatest. The hours are very long. They have disciplinary issues in the classroom. They don't feel supported by administration, who basically have restorative practices instead of real discipline.
I know so many teachers who have gotten out of the school system because of this issue. And I think that more than pay, this is the biggest issue for teachers, is their quality of life. If they're going into school every day, they want to make a difference. They got their degree in education because they love kids and they love teaching, and you want to feel effective and you want to feel appreciated. And when all you're doing is behavior management all day, every day, and you're not supported by the administration, eventually, if you have, self-love and self-confidence, you're just beat down at the end of the day and you decide to get out of the profession. And I think that that's a huge reason why we're losing so many highly qualified teachers, is really just the behavior and the administration.
And they are leaving. People need to understand that teachers are leaving the profession in droves.
Yes.
And it's just sad because, as you said, I raised my kids here in Frederick as well. And we went to Middletown School District and Myersville School District, and I loved the schools. My wife and I loved our teachers. They were great. They were the greatest.
Yeah.
To find out that they're not supported in these restorative practices, can you address restorative practices? What is so problematic about restorative practices as a form of discipline in schools?
Somewhere along the line, I don't know when this policy was passed. So if it's a minority student, they're not allowed to be, in school suspension or out school suspension. And so there's no longer even a structure for this type of discipline. So if somebody is disrupting your classroom, they simply possibly are removed for a matter of minutes to calm down, and then they're put right back in. And so they may have disrespected you, they may have hit somebody, and they're right back in the classroom. And so, as a teacher, you can't just be disrespected in front of the whole class and the kid comes right back in. That's just, a recipe for disaster where you lose the respect of all the kids.
I've had teacher friends that told me that they sent major problem children, violent kids, out of the classroom, and they came back with a snack bag, and they were told they had to bring them back in the classroom.
In DC, I saw one kid stomp on another kid's head. He did not miss one moment of school. His parents did not come to the school because they called and nobody answered, and the kid did not miss one moment.
Safety and security is really important in the schools right now. And Frederick County does have an issue with safety and security, especially for the teachers. Teachers are getting assaulted. They're getting hurt.
We have cameras everywhere throughout society. Wherever you go, a restaurant, driving down the streets, anywhere you go, there's cameras. But for some reason, there's not. There are some in schools, but they're not in the classrooms. Mm-hmm. We really need cameras in classrooms, and we really need SRO officers. We really need more men inside the buildings on a day-to-day basis to manage behavior, but having an SRO officer per school that walks around, knows the kids, monitors everything, knows what's going on, what doors should be open, what doors should be closed and locked. And, that would, I think, improve a lot of this. Just seeing the SRO officer walk around, say hi to them, check in with them on a day-to-day basis, I think could alleviate some of this.
School resource officer.
Yeah. Yes.
Who is an actual deputized police officer. And usually they have a cluster. They're assigned to a high school, and then they have a junior high under that, and then elementary schools under that they are responsible for. So what you're saying is you'd like to see an SRO in each and every school.
Right. Well, if a fight breaks out inside a classroom or in the hallway and the SRO is, 10 minutes down the street at an elementary school, they're not really going to be there. Or like what recently happened in Wooten High School, where there was an active shooter. If he's not in the building, there's not much that he can do.
I'm actually going to have Sheriff Chuck Jenkins on here in a couple of weeks. I'm going to ask him about the SRO program and see if, what his intention is to beef it up. So that's a great question. You are running on the common sense slate, which is considered a conservative slate. Frederick County's broken down. You got 20%, maybe 30% are really hardcore liberals. And then you got 20 or 30% that are hardcore conservatives. And then you have the middle, which I'm part of. So when the middle is really the one that's going to determine who is on this school board. And the middle people look at conservatives who often talk about politics in the classroom. And liberals, I think, argue that banning or restricting books or banning curriculum is in itself a political move. How would you answer that allegation?
The midline voter, I think what we need to focus on is academics. Everybody wants to send their kid to school and know that they are being well educated. We live in the richest country in the world. We spend more money than any other country in the world to educate our students. And we are not scoring well internationally or even as well as we were just a few years ago. It's just been a downhill slope. And I don't hear either side really talking about the academics and the proficiency level of these kids. But in regards to politics, when we send our kids to school, they should be getting the fundamentals. They should be reading world literature. They should be reading from the canon of literature that really expands their minds and really challenges them to learn new ideas. Math, there are ways to teach math to mastery. Countries like Singapore have been doing this year after year after year. There's ways to do these things. We've known how to do this for generations. And all of a sudden we keep implementing all these new programs, these new ideas, these new ideologies that take up all the place of the things that we used to do, like phonics. Every person who's an adult today who reads learned to read through phonics. And right now they're trying to try this new approach called the whole language approach, which is more like of a guessing game. And you know what? The kids aren't proficient anymore.
It's scary. It is scary, the proficiency level of our kids. I just read a recent stat that said only one in three eighth graders reads at proficiency level.
I'm sure that there are a lot of things that go into that It's not just that the education or the style of teaching is wrong. I think, we're no longer a homogeneous society. We have kids from all over the world that come here with different educational backgrounds and are thrown into mainstream classes, and they take the same tests. So that's one reason. We also know that these computers have been a big problem. What seemed like a great idea at the beginning of COVID, the research is there. These kids aren't learning on these computers. These computers are a detriment. As soon as they enter in the classrooms and they have a one-to-one device, the test scores, they plateau, and then they start to plummet. And this has happened worldwide during COVID, where student reading scores have gone down, and countries across Europe are spending millions of dollars to get books back into schools knowing this. I was just going to say that there's a lot of reasons, but we do know some of them, and we can change them.
Let's address policy 443. People on the far left really they're being a bonnet over policy 443, and the fact that conservatives believe that policy needs to be rescinded. Can you explain policy 443 to us?
Sure. So the current policy, I think it was established in 2017, 2018, something like that. And it basically, there's a few elements to the policy. So biological boys are allowed to go into girls' restrooms and vice versa, can play in girls' sports and vice versa, can go into girls' locker rooms and vice versa. And then on overnight stays, so if you're a basketball player or, field hockey player and you travel and you go on overnight stays, let's say a biological boy can be roomed with a biological girl, and there's no notification to the girl beforehand or her parents. So the parents of that child have no idea that a biological boy is being roomed with her. The school does not allow them to know. Where the compelled speech aspects, where teachers and students were required to use the new names and the new pronouns that the students wanted, which may be ever changing. I don't even know all the pronouns at this point. And I think some teachers stood up for the First Amendment rights. And another part of the policy is that a student who decides to change genders at school and go by a new name and new pronouns, the teacher was banned from telling the parents. So if the parents called the school and asked and wanted to talk about this, the teachers were not allowed to communicate this information to the parents. The only part of the policy that has been amended was the compelled speech aspect. As I was telling you, I taught overseas, but I was teaching in Montgomery County until 2015. And this wasn't even an idea. Gender ideology, transgender, all of these different pronouns, it wasn't a thought in our brains. It wasn't a word on our lips. We didn't talk about it. We didn't know about it. Mm-hmm. And now it's just exploded. And it's mainly around the DC area. So Loudoun County, Virginia, and Montgomery County, Maryland are the two counties that really are pushing this agenda. And it seems like Frederick County wants to get on board and be, the top. You would think it would be New York or California, but it's us.
I can tell you that worldwide, people are rolling this stuff back. I mean, these Scandinavian countries that everybody's trying to talk about, they're all rolling those policies straight back. Only the United States of America is the only industrialized country that hasn't realized that children are fickle. And you need to give them some time to figure things out till they're about 18, 19. Then if they want to be transgender or trans, whatever they want to do is fine as an adult. When do we give up parental responsibility and say, you know what, I'm going to allow my child to decide what genitals they should have? I mean, what parent can say that's perfectly reasonable?
Well, I think that there has been a huge propaganda campaign for this, and it has scared parents. It has told parents that if you don't allow this to happen, then your child will become suicidal. That was the big fear mongering. And so parents started going along with it. But now we actually have the research. The data is there that gender affirming care, if a student is actually, or a child is actually transitioned, their rate of suicide does not go down. They still
not at all. Not even a lick.
Now that they've cut off their parts and are on all these medications, Big Pharma's customer for life, they are not less suicidal.
It's amazing to me that a child cannot get a tattoo, but they could have their genitals removed. We are in a very weird society. There's no doubt about it. I will say this. Many LGBTQ students and parents, they feel targeted by conservative policies. Even this is nationwide, but especially in Frederick County. What would you say to families who genuinely feel that their child is less safe, less accepted in a school district without policy 443?
Well, this goes back to our earlier conversation about student behavior. There is currently a bullying policy. We need to strengthen it, and we need to hold people accountable. We need to hold the students accountable, and we need to hold the parents accountable. You know, the parents need to be coming up to the school on a regular basis and be on our side so that we can stop the bullying, the harassment. That's what I hear when I listen to Democrat candidate forums. They talk about bullying and harassment all the time, and it's really we're the adults. We're allowing this to continue. And I know that social media and the cell phones have a lot to do with it as well. So let's get them out. They don't need to be in school whatsoever. We are there to learn. We are there for academics. And so we need to, as parents, as teachers, as adults, we need to be in those schools and make sure that everybody is safe. Nobody's targeted or getting bullied, and follow up and hold them accountable. Ending policy 443 is not trying to harm anyone's student. It's just trying to make it fair and make school about academics.
And it should be noted that policy 443, especially in Frederick County, evolved over the course of time. From its inception, it had a lot more concessions for both sides, and then it became more and more progressive.
Well, and the thing about it is that there are no guardrails. So, you know, when a parent sends their kid to school, they hope that they're getting a, world-class education, but at bare minimum, that they're safe. Bare minimum that they're safe. And there are no guardrails to prevent a man from going into a little girl's restroom. There's none. There nothing in the policy that where there needs to be a doctor's note or a testosterone test or a bone density test before a kid goes into, a girl's sports or something. There are no guardrails whatever to make sure that, this child, has the physique that's similar to a girl of his age,
Worldwide, the Olympics, the Scandinavian countries, all of them are rolling back their policies on transgenders competing against women in women's sports. It seems like the DC area, Montgomery County, and now Frederick County are still on this old wavelength where they believe that it is fair or even safe for a biological male to compete against females. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it lacks all common sense. And I don't know. I think this has been, the boiling frog, the slow boiling frog that has just happened and gotten crazier and crazier over time. And hopefully we will get elected onto the board and we will end it week 1. It's not fair. It's not safe. It's not okay. It's not sane. Let's focus on academics. I think that there could be discussions around having co-ed sports, single-use bathrooms, single-use locker room, and co-ed sports for the students who want to participate in them. But no way that I think a little boy or a teenage boy should be able to play against teenage girls. We've seen what's happened with the volleyball players. I don't remember what her name was, but she got knocked out and had a horrible concussion and hasn't been able to play after playing volleyball against a boy. So 2
Olympic boxers got fractured skulls, literally fractured skulls, from being punched by biological males.
Yeah.
Who are competing in female sports. It is a very dangerous situation.
I think it's very unfair. And I feel empathetic for them, but I don't think it's fair. And I feel empathetic for them, and I feel like we need to discuss this. This is an issue of concern, and they need our empathy, but I feel like we don't need to endanger girls because of this. And I think that's what we're doing right now.
So I think you're saying that most conservatives believe that the kids are important. It's not that the trans kids don't matter or their feelings or their safety. I think if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is that their choices should not affect everybody else in the school.
No, exactly. I mean, it's an issue, but I think schools are making it a bigger issue than it needs to be. It's part of the curriculum. I don't know if you've had a look, but the Maryland State Health curriculum that they are pushing is teaching this starting in pre-K. It is being pushed in schools. Kids are learning about this in schools instead of just it being a handful of kids. And it's a case by case basis, and you're very empathetic to them. To now, it's like it's this indoctrination camp. When you go to school, you're talking about your gender and your feelings and your sexual orientation and your identity. Why? In pre-K, in kindergarten. I don't understand this. It's written into the curriculum. This is not education. This is not education. This is not setting them up for success in the world.
No, it's indoctrination. There's no doubt about it. It's ideology is what it is. There's a big difference between education and ideology. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing more and more in our schools. And this is why moderates like me aligning more and more with conservatives like yourself and the common sense slate. I mean, I look at you guys and I'm like, yeah, that's what I believe. I mean, I grew up a Democrat from Massachusetts. I come down here to Maryland. I continue on my Democratic pathway, and then I realize my party has left me for some kind of weird, progressive, left-wing ideology that I don't support, and no real American would. It's amazing to me how far my Democratic Party has left me.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in the theater. I was definitely not a Republican in any way, shape, or the form. I did theater. I lived in Washington, D.C. I had a lot of friends who were gay, and it was totally acceptable. They were out, no issues. But it's different when you're trying to force this onto children. And it's also all of my friends who were gay, they never thought that they were a woman, or they never thought that they were a man. This was just their lifestyle, and they weren't forcing other people to accept it or push it on them. And this is a whole different situation. So yeah, I didn't know that I was conservative.
Now, I got a lot of gay friends, and a lot of them are conservative, and a lot of them are not down with this progressive left LGBTQ plus. They themselves, they don't want to see children, exploited or mutilated either.
Well, I mean, clearly there's an agenda behind it. Once you get a kid on SSRIs or hormone replacement, and then the medicalization, the cutting off of parts, you have a lifelong customer. Big pharma, the medical industry, already the biggest industry in the world, just has a lifelong consumer to pay the bills.
I recently read a couple of articles by transgender children who were allowed to transition, and they have deep regrets. Deep regrets. I mean, it is sad. I literally was tearful reading these articles from these people who their parents facilitated, instead of just being a parent saying, no, you have to wait. Right. Parents used to say no. You remember those days?
Right.
Now they're like, yeah, whatever, you want to transition, you want to cut off your genitals, why not? We abdicated our parental responsibilities, which is to say, no, you need to wait. A lot of the articles I'm reading from these folks who have transitioned and are now having deep regrets, they personally feel like their parents should have stepped up. Their parents should have said no. They should have said, you know what, wait a couple years. Things will change. It's amazing how time can change things.
Right. Time and maturity. Our brains, they say our brains aren't fully developed till we're 24 years old, where we really understand the consequences of our actions, which makes sense that we don't want kids to drink before 21. We don't want them to have guns before 18, because we don't really know the repercussions of our actions. But
the analogy I use with parents is, would you allow your 12-year-old to get a tattoo? Of course they wouldn't. No right parent is going to let a 12-year-old get a permanent thing for the rest of their lives. But some parents will allow their children to physically transform their bodies by removing their genitals. A permanent situation that's never going to be able to be fixed. Children who absolutely matter. There's no doubt those kids matter.
Of course they do.
We want to validate them. We want them to feel safe.
That's the big issue, is that it's being taught. There are books in the schools that are teaching this. There are teachers with the trans flags, which now FCPS allows the trans flags to be in classrooms, are pushing this ideology on these kids. We've taken the Bible out of school, which, it makes sense because we are a country of religious freedom. So Muslim kids don't need to come to school and study scripture. Likewise, Christians don't need to study the Torah or the Quran. So but here we are, we're teaching all students this new gender ideology, this new form of a religion. And I feel like, okay, if we're going to do that, then we need to teach all religions. Let's just go to school and learn about all the different ideologies and theories and religions that are out there. Or we do the opposite and we just focus on academics, which we've been doing for centuries and doing a good job at.
Are there any examples of school districts or schools in Maryland who have gone back to the basics and have had success?
Carroll County is currently the best performing school district in the county, and they are very conservative, and they have found ways around teaching this stuff. Some of it's written into the curriculums, and have really given the parents a voice to opt out of all of these things.
Steve Whistler from Carroll County, who was the president of the Board of Education up there, I believe, he came on the show and said basically the same thing. And I researched the stats, and not only is Carroll County's test scores across the board tops in the state, Carroll County's dollars per student is less than any of the other counties with a sizable population, is what I'm saying. It's amazing. It's the results. And he basically said exactly what you just said. Their game plan was go back to the basics. They said they're not going to do politics or ideology in the classroom. They're going to go back to reading, writing, arithmetic, and focus on core values like statesmanship and citizenship and things like that. Old school schools.
Mark, it doesn't take $1 billion to educate students. It really doesn't. As an international teacher, I'm very interested in where our standing is internationally. And there's the test called the PISA test. And 80 countries currently are sign up to be part of this test. And it's a test of all 15-year-olds. And they test English, reading, writing, math, science, and then I think last year it was financial literacy, some other skill that they decide to test on. And we spend by far more than any other country in the world, any other country in the world on education. And yet in 2022, we were number 36, I think, in math. So countries like Latvia and Malta were scoring higher than us. Yet they spend like a minute amount on educating their children. So when you listen to the Democrat candidates, they always talk about the need for more money. But the truth is that more money is not helping these kids. That more technology is not helping these kids. We need less technology in the classrooms. We need more books and papers and pencils and phonics and teaching math to mastery before moving on. We need more discipline. We need more accountability, less pushing along students who haven't mastered the skills yet.
And if you look at the money situation for the school systems, it always goes back to the unions. It goes back to the teachers' unions time and time again. They support your opposition. The Apple ballot is all of them. Every one of the Apple ballots was endorsed and is being funded in their campaigns by teachers' unions.
Well, it seems very unfair and dishonest. And a lot of teachers, I was one of these people who signed into the teachers' union upon, being accepted into Montgomery County Public Schools, and you're given a ton of information, all this paperwork, no leadership, no guidance on how to fill it all out. And you're basically told that if you don't join the teachers union, you won't get these benefits. You won't get the health care. You won't get the 403B retirement plan. And so you don't think that you have a choice. And all of a sudden, $200 is out of your check every 2 weeks and you're paying into it, but I don't really know what you're getting from it. And then they take this money and they don't donate their money to campaigns. And it seems very unfair. I'm not really sure how teachers' unions really help teachers that much to negotiate salaries and working conditions for teachers. But teachers can do that. And I believe that unions are important for that reason, but this one has just become a mammoth and it's just outgrown, its need. And now it seems to be a bit corrupt.
And it should be noted that these candidates that the teachers' unions are funding, if elected, will be the ones negotiating with the teachers' unions for future contracts for their teachers.
Correct.
That is, I don't know how you can't call that corruption.
And they've given them thousands of dollars for their campaign, so they don't even have to do, the work to, ask local people for money to support them.
And they do all the work for them. They put the flyers together for them, the signs, all of that stuff is paid for by teachers' unions.
Well, clearly the more money that we throw at this problem, it's not helping the students. And I for one, and our team want to get in and do like a Doge style audit and see where is this money going? Because the teachers aren't well paid. I've heard complaints about the staff that work with the children are not well paid. They have to work multiple jobs to support themselves in Frederick County. The most of the money should be going to the classrooms. They should be going to resources that help the students and to support teachers so that we can retain high quality teachers and attract high quality teachers that want to be in our system, that love working with our students and want to stay here. And so where is all this money going? 47% of the money in the budget goes to teacher salaries. So where's it going? It's not your money. It's so easy to spend. And so lots of subscriptions like ed tech platforms, they just keep paying them year after year, even though nobody's using them. Contracts that are not negotiated properly. So I'd really like to get in there and see where exactly is all this money going and make sure that most of it gets into the classrooms.
I don't know a single person in Frederick County Public Schools who tells me that their salary is sufficient. All the teachers I know either tutor on the side or have a part-time job just to make ends meet. So where is this money going? And I read recently in a statistic that said that out of an 8-hour day, 2.2 hours are actually spent in active learning mode for kids. Out of an 8-hour day, we barely get 2 hours of them with their attention and able to teach them. I know as a parent, I don't want that valuable 2 hours filled up with any ideology, any politics, left or right. I want them teaching the basics to my kids so that they can be proficient in this world and, be successful.
In regards to transparency, I wanted to know what the English curriculum was. As a teacher, as a curriculum developer myself, and somebody who pays into the system, I don't have children in the system, but I pay into the system as a taxpayer. I wanted to go online and see, what exactly was the English curriculum? What are they learning in 9th grade? And I couldn't see it. They just put an advertisement for the online program that they're using in K through 12. And so as a parent, you can't go online and see what your kid is going to be learning in 7th grade. In Carroll County, you can, and you should be able to. Somebody moving into the area might want to have a look and see, well, what are they teaching 7th grade students this year or 6th grade students? What is my student going to learn? And I've spoken with other board members about this, and they haven't been able to get a hold of the curriculum and know what the students are learning every year. And that needs to change. And if I get elected to the board, that will change. I feel like it should be very clear. I think that you as a parent or even just a taxpayer, a resident, should say, what are students learning in 10th grade social studies? What are they learning in English? What are they reading this year?
Parents have a right to see the curriculum of that's being taught to their children. And so what are you hiding? Yeah. What is it you're hiding that you can't show the parents?
Ideally, in 9th grade, when I was in 9th grade and when you were in 9th grade, you probably read Henry David Thoreau and Walt Emerson and a little bit of Shakespeare, all high-level things that stretch your brain. It's a little difficult to grasp with, but your teacher helps you along. And here they are reading about incest, molestation, abuse from the survivors. So probably the academic language was pretty low. So the parent wasn't concerned about this. She was just concerned that she didn't know, and her daughter had to read out loud a situation in class that she had personally experienced and was traumatized by it. So her only request was that the school board or the school please let her know beforehand so that she could prepare her daughter for this. And I was sitting there in the audience thinking, why are they reading this? What is the academic purpose of this novel, of this book? Where's Thoreau? Where's Emerson? Where's Shakespeare? Where's the literary canon that is really going to push and stretch the minds of these children instead of always reading about ourselves? And so the fact that, like, as a parent, you don't get a list of the unit topics and the novels and the short stories that are going to be read, that should go out over the summer. We should know.
We did when I was a kid.
Yep.
The reading list was always out by the summertime, and you knew what books were going to be used in the next coming year.
Well, Mark, a big problem is that they're not reading books anymore. So when I was in Middletown Elementary School, starting in 5th grade, we read 2 complete novels. We had the physical novel. We read it from cover to cover. And then we were tested on it and we wrote about it. Nowadays, they're reading excerpts of books that are online, and they're asked small questions about, like, informational-based questions on these excerpts. They're not reading physical books anymore.
That's just sad.
I don't think sex, gender, ideology, any of this should be talked about in school whatsoever. I don't think sex should be in school until 9th grade biology class. I don't understand what is the educational purpose of these books, and I don't think they belong in schools. If parents want to go to Amazon and buy them and read them to their students, but I don't think there should be any sexual information inside an elementary school, a middle school, or even a high school. The actual content of these books is quite disturbing when you actually see, like, they're teaching them how to do things and there's graphic pictures, and it's just insanity.
The hypersexualization of our public schools is really problematic.
I mean, I actually have some of the Maryland health curriculum right here, and I can read to you in pre-K and kindergarten where it starts out where they're naming genitalia. They're talking about masturbation and ejaculation in 4th grade.
Fourth grade,
teaching the class about ejaculation. I'm not sure how a teacher does that. You know, I am a certified teacher. I have a master's degree and 15 years of experience, and I do not feel qualified to talk to any person's child about sex and their identity and their genitalia. It seems so inappropriate to me. And so pre-K, that's 4 years old. Do they need to know the proper name and location of genitalia? I don't think so.
No.
I can't think of a reason. In 7th grade, they learn all about reproduction and all of that. In 8th grade, they're teaching them about contraception and how to find it. So they're 12 in 8th grade.
The hubris of them thinking that they know better than parents when our children should learn about sexual activity.
Well, the Board of Education did not write this. This is coming down from the state of Maryland. This is the Maryland state, and they are trying to make it so that this health curriculum is woven out throughout the school day in a variety of subjects. It's not just like when you and I had sexual ed. It was like 1 or 2 weeks, and it was a block, and it was very easy for a mom or dad to say, no, you don't need that. Well, this will be like a little bit in English class, a little bit in social studies, a little bit in science, a little bit in math, so that it's all woven out so that parents aren't able to opt out of it. So this is coming from on high. And I'm not even sure if the Board of Ed members have actually really looked at it. Well, what I've learned is that the board can't sue the state over this. It has to be the parents. So it really has to be the parents that rise up and go to the state and sue the state over this curriculum.
That's the fact. I mean, that's the state of Maryland, through the blueprint from Maryland and the other policies they've passed, really are dictating how to raise our kids.
Yes, even more so with the blueprint now. And they're really trying to tie the hands of local school boards and saying, no, sorry, you have to do X, Y, and Z. You have to teach X, Y, and Z, or you won't get the money that taxpayers are paying to fund the school, right? You won't get your own money back.
That's a really good point. And, we talked earlier about academic achievement, and I know that the Charter School of Frederick has had great success with a very diverse school body and has huge success by going back to the basics. I mean, they wear uniforms, they teach statesmanship, they reading, writing, arithmetic, no ideology, none of that stuff in the classroom, real classroom discipline. And they are excelling. They're the #1 charter school in all of the Maryland, right here in Frederick. I have one of my favorite teachers, and I loved him. He loved me. He was so big on my guidance, right? I didn't know what sexuality he was. I didn't know what political party he was. I had no idea about his personal beliefs at all. He was just a teacher who,
Yep.
who was trying to teach a guy, and he did an amazing job over it. Now, he never, ever, brought his personal life into school. It was just, he was just Mr. Deniston, the teacher who I loved. And he put me into academics and books, and he would bring me books and give them to him and say, hey, Mark, take this one, take this one, take this one. He was just a great teacher. And he didn't have to tell me anything other than what we were teaching. I'm going to give you the last word, Shelley. You, like I said, that 40 to 60% in the middle, the moderates like me, that you need to really have on your side to win this Board of Education race, which I believe is the most important race in Frederick County.
Well, if I'm elected and I get on the board, especially with my buddies Tyler Walker and Jeff Seidel, we are going to make sure that our schools are, one, safe, that there are cameras in the classrooms, there are resource officers in each school, that behavior and accountability are put in place so that there's all of this idea of bullying and harassment, that it's actually being dealt with and not just talked about. We're going to focus on academics. We're going to get back to teaching phonics in the lower grades. We're going to get back to reading actual real literature. We really want to put a crackdown on the Chromebooks. We know now that all of this technology has really been harming student learning. And so we want to get back to the basics of writing by hand with pencil because it's good for their brains. And getting off those Chromebooks, a percentage of the time, and getting back to the basics so that we can compare with the Classical Charter School of Maryland, which is the best charter school in Maryland.
Shelley, you're part of the Common Slate, and I know you have been endorsed by several parent organizations. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I'm on the Common Sense slate with Tyler Walker and Jeff Seidel. We came together because we really aligned with each other on all of our views and can see that we can help each other out with things. So we have been endorsed by Better Maryland Schools. They had made every candidate go through a questionnaire and a candidate forum where they really got to know us and our ideals and our values and why we're doing this, and they have endorsed us. And also the Orange Ballot slate has also endorsed us along with another candidate, Heather Fletcher. So you might see our signs around Frederick County. We are running where our signs are all Orange Ballot signs. So Heather Fletcher's on there as well as us.
So why Orange Ballot?
Because it's the opposite of the Apple ballot.
And the Apple ballot are the ones that are endorsed by the teachers' unions.
Exactly. And they want more money. They want more ideology. They don't talk about academics ever. And we want to talk about academics. We want to talk about parental rights. And we don't need so much money in these schools.
And as a moderate in the middle, I can tell you the biggest problem I have with the Apple ballot is their willingness to keep parents in the dark. Their lack of transparency, and they are perfectly fine with lying to parents, making parents get a FOIA request in order to get access to their own children's records. People need to know these facts. Take away the R, take away the D, take away the I, and just look at the issues. What is important to you as a family? Who represents your values as a family? You may be surprised. It might be somebody on the other side of the aisle.
Correct.
Well, Shelley, thank you so much for being on Mid-Maryland Votes. You've been a great guest.
Thanks, Mark. I've enjoyed this.
Hey, this has been Mark Flynn with Mid-Maryland Votes with my guest, Shelley Potter, who is running for the Board of Education for Frederick County Public Schools. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, folks, do the research, look at the candidates, and do not vote for party lines. Vote for who represents your values. Thank you for being with us tonight on Mid-Maryland Votes. That was Frederick County Board of Education candidate Shelley Potter. As this election approaches, voters face an important choice about the future direction of Frederick County Public Schools. Should the focus be on improving reading, writing, arithmetic, discipline, and academic outcomes, or on expanding policies and programs that have become increasingly political and controversial. Whatever your view, the decision belongs to the voters. Mid-Maryland Votes, bringing people from different backgrounds together for real civil conversations that still matter. Like, follow, and share, and we'll see you next time on Mid-Maryland Votes.